Due to the COVID-19 and other restrictions, we could not travel to Geneva. So technology provides us this better platform to assemble and debate on these issues. As the topic, today's webinar, everywhere around the globe, women's rights are being discussed and awareness campaigns are being run on this very important issue. So we thought that we should bring in the issue of violence against women in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. A large-scale usage of violence in Jammu and Kashmir has been part and persistent and dominant feature of India's imperial state policy. The consequence and impact of this reckless state violence on the Kashmiri society, politics, and culture has been vastly underestimated, particularly the sexual violence being leveraged as weapon of war by the Indian force in the region has been grossly overlooked at the international level, despite growing awareness of the urgent need of empowering women in the conflict-hit areas such as Kashmir. While prolonged Indian military occupation, massive troop built and sprawling military campus stretched across cities, towns, and villages has created a fertile ground for violence against women. Being a vulnerable part of the society, the Kashmiri women have unfortunately been the worst victims of this long-drawn, unresolved dispute that has left behind a harrowing legacy in persons of rape victims, widows, of widows. The continued conflict, bloodshed, and violence has shattered the lives of Kashmiri women so much so that today 36% of women in the troubled region suffer anxiety and disorder. So in today's webinar, we will discuss all these issues, the reparations available in international law, and what is the duty of the civil society around the globe and international experts to this issue, and especially the Kashmir conflict, which is a long-standing conflict, unresolved conflict, which is consuming more lives and is posing a threat to the international peace and security because being engulfed by 3 nuclear powers. To start with today's proceedings, we have a short documentary on the victimization of women in occupied Kashmir prepared by our intern, Anisa Nabi. Most of you know Anisa Nabi, and most of you have met her in Geneva. She's herself a victim. Her mother and her father both were disappeared by the Indian forces, and she was the one at the age of 13. She testified herself at the Geneva before the working group on the enforced disappearances. So first of all, we will have that documentary. Can we have the documentary, ma'am?
We don't understand who we are waiting for.
Go, woman. Thank you. This was the documentary prepared by Anisa Navi. You have seen all those statistics and visuals from this documentary. We have a very wonderful panel of women, women rights activists, academicians, and civil society actors and ex-parliamentarians. I will straight away go to Margaret Owen. Barrister Margaret Owen is chairperson, Widows for Peace, pro-democracy and human rights activist for UK. Margaret Owen is barrister specializing in women's human rights. She is also founder member of the Gender Action on Peace and Security and is advisor on women and children rights, the Kurdish Human Rights Project. She is a regular participant at the UN Commission on the Status of Women and has been the consultant on the widowhood to the woman. Margaret is a good friend of not only the people of Kashmir, the women of Kashmir, but also the women rights around the globe. She has extensively written and spoken on the Kashmir conflict and on the miseries of Kashmiri women. Margaret, you have the floor. But I will request all the panelists, as we have a huge panel, to keep your presentation or intervention within 10 minutes. Thank you all.
I've
Margaret,
got,
you have the floor.
10 minutes. I must take my watch off and look. Greetings to everybody at this wonderful meeting. Today is International Women's Day. And all over the world, women are coming together in an odd way to celebrate it. But I cannot celebrate it. I can only deplore the unbelievable rise in violence against women in so many countries in the world. And Kashmir, which is, I think, called the most militarized territory anywhere in the world. It's almost off the radar screen. But every day, and we've just seen your clips before I began to speak, the appalling toll on women's lives that the occupation by India of Kashmir has taken. It was appalling. It was August the 5th or August the 7th, 2019, when the Indian government used Article 370 of their constitution to actually take away, under Constitution of 35A, take away the autonomy that Kashmir had. And although you've had 30 years of conflict in Kashmir, it's really the fight between Pakistan and India, the violence against women since August 19 has actually escalated. And as you said, there are now so many widows, so many thousands of men have been either detained, killed, abducted, disappeared, that it's left maybe 23,000 women who are widows. But on top of that, can you still hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we do hear you.
Good. But on top of that, it is in Kashmir where we first coined the phrase half widows. But these are the women who don't even know whether they're widows or not. Their men have simply been disappeared, abducted, taken, whether they were working in their fields, walking down a street, or in their homes. Indian troops just suddenly took them away. And these women have no closure. They don't know whether their husbands are dead, lying in one of the many mass graves. I think there's something like over 10,000 disappeared people. And they don't know whether they're dead in a mass grave or whether they're somewhere else in a prison somewhere. Are they in prison in India? Somewhere else? Where are they? And their lives, the half-widows of Kashmir, it's terrible just to be a widow, it's true. But to be a half-widow, their lives are even more wretched than that of the widows because they have no legal status. They can't even, who are they? They have no property rights, even though it would be difficult as a widow to inherit, because under Muslim law, the widow gets 1/8. Maybe if she has no children, she gets 1/4. But the half widow, who isn't a full widow, has no death certificate. She gets absolutely nothing. And the half widows have no closure. They cannot even mourn or bury their dead. And on top of that, many of these women, these widows, who are living in rural areas, they're often illiterate. They can't even get any legal help. They don't know how to find out what is the fate of their husbands. And if they actually try to go to the authorities, find out, they're intimidated and threatened. And we also have to say about rape, the gang rapes. I'm not sure exactly what date it was, but I think maybe sometime 2 years ago, the Indian government, isn't Modi a war criminal? Isn't he guilty of genocide? Should be tried at the International Criminal Court. But they actually passed a decree or resolution that any Indian soldier would be immune from any prosecution for any acts that they committed when they were in uniform. And Indian soldiers have actually been given the green light implicitly that it's perfectly all right to go and rape Muslim women. After all, in India itself, Muslims in India are continually subject to appalling harassment in that country. But in Kashmir, there's something terrible that we can't even, it's gone on for 30 years, the dispute between India and Pakistan over Kashmir. And again, the UN, the Security Council, have asked India and Pakistan to get together around the table and have some dialogue to bring about an end to this appalling situation in Kashmir, where tens of thousands of people have been arrested, including lawyers, members of parliament. And many of the most eminent and brilliant people in Kashmir have been taken away, imprisoned in jails, maybe far away in India. I'm so deeply concerned at the silence of the international community about what is happening in Kashmir, and the way India refuses even to discuss it, saying Kashmir is not a country, it's part of India. So there's this appalling silence by the international community, silence by all our governments, silence when it is women in Kashmir, amazing women who now, so many of them are widows, so many of them are half widows, so many of them have been gang raped. And that also is another, of course, who should be shamed by this are the rapists. But as we know, in so many countries, it's so difficult for women victims of rape to actually speak out without causing much more violence to them. So I end this really by begging the international community and the ICC to actually investigate what is happening. I think that there's something like 2,700 mass graves in Kashmir, and there needs to be an international investigation so we can find out who is in those mass graves through DNA, and these poor women, these half widows, will know whether and get a death certificate. At the moment, they can't get a death certificate because there's no proof of the death. So they can't remarry if they wanted to remarry, but they have absolutely no legal status in relation to property or something they could have inherited. So they are the poorest of the poor. And I hope that this meeting today, when you've got such amazing panelists, that we can really ensure that the international community, and right here my own government, because I think that even the Labour Party here, and we'll hear what Julie Ward will say, but they don't want to get involved. They think they don't want to see this as an international issue. They think it's a domestic issue. So they haven't actually taken the side of Kashmir against India. And that's partly, I suppose, because they don't want to lose their Indian votes, but they've lost, because of this, they've lost a lot of Muslim votes. I'll end now. I think it's wonderful, Shamin Shaul. I have so much admiration for you that you actually bring together this meeting. And I vow that we will go on, all of us, speaking wherever we can to be sure that we get the support and solidarity of the big women's organizations all over the world to actually draw attention to what is happening to Kashmir, and that this terrible, it's continuing even as I speak. There'll be more, I think, Indian soldiers in Kashmir than there are Kashmiris now. It's absolutely packed with Indian soldiers, and they are doing the most terrible things. So I wish you all, and I hope that next year we can begin to celebrate International Women's Day. But today I think we can only grieve that we've got so much more to do, because in Kashmir and in every country where there are conflicts, what happens? You separate the men and boys, you kill, abduct, get rid of the men and boys, and you rape and impoverish and humiliate the women. And this has got to stop. Thank you very much for giving me your floor, and I wish you all the best. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Margaret, for your wonderful intervention, as you have been always a very powerful voice for the women victims around the globe, especially the Kashmiri women. We wish you the best of health and a long life to cherish the freedom of Kashmiri women and their rights. As Julie has to leave, she is in travel, so she has been very kind to be there. So Julie, you have the floor.
Yes, I will be very brief. I think the statistics speak for themselves. Your opening video, is a reminder of the enormity of the crime of violence, gender-based violence against Kashmiri women. I'm not going to continue to speak about that because I think, you have all the evidence. Also, Margaret is, an expert in terms of human rights law, international norms, and spoke very eloquently about that. What I wanted to say is that whilst it's hard to celebrate International Women's Day today, not just because of what's happening in Kashmir, but also because of what is happening in Ukraine. I was in Kiev in the days leading up to the invasion. In so many countries around the world, there are terrible, terrible conflicts, which means that it's quite difficult for us to bring ourselves into a mindset of, you know, being positive and what do we do about this. But I just want to say that if you look at the women on this panel here today, that has to be the hope. The hope is that my wonderful friend and sister Shamin Shaul and Professor Shagufta have reached out and taught us about the violations and included us in this extraordinary movement of raising awareness and courageous speaking out. And Margaret said something about, you know, the Labour Party, which is my Labour Party, but human rights are human rights, atrocities are atrocities, and the truth is the truth. And all of us who are on this call today, and all of us who are part of this this movement and this this continued campaign to seek justice, all of us know that we have to continue. We have to be, you know, every time there is a challenge, we have to be stronger. We have to come together more often. We have to know that we can trust each other when we're in communication, and that we will be present in the moment to continue having this conversation. And when I looked at the list of people who were speaking today, I saw that there is a young woman from the Fabians. And I realized that this is somebody who is new to me regarding this this action and this sorry, it's Cecilia, isn't it? Cecilia. And I was really pleased to see that there is, you know, that the diversity of the people on the panel today, coming from lots of countries, nationalities, you know, ethnicities, religions, and we're all here together, and we will not be silenced, and we will speak the truth, even if the truth is uncomfortable, right? And that has to be the power of International Women's Day, is that we will not be silent, right? We will stand with our sisters who are under attack, and we will stand with them always, and we won't be silenced. We won't be quiet because it might suit somebody politically or otherwise, for us to brush these terrible violations under the carpet. And I think that's something to celebrate. Sisterhood, you know, that here is what we must celebrate, because otherwise we would feel so hopeless. We would feel that it is so helpless, that the world is in such a terrible mess right now that, you know, there's nothing that we can do. But what we have to do is to continue to reach out to new people, to draw them into this movement, and to stick together and to continue to speak the truth, the uncomfortable, difficult truths, even when people don't want to hear. And that is what I will pledge to do going forwards, to continue to be a truth teller at this very difficult time. And I hope you have a really good, informative. If my other finished, I will come to all of you for being here.
Thank you, Julie. Yes, we have to be truth tellers, and we should keep on telling the truth to the world, so that the world could come to the rescue to those victims who need their help. I will now go to Cecilia. Cecilia is a new addition to our group, the campaigners for the women's rights in Kashmir. Cecilia is a parliamentary policy advisor, women's rights activist, animal welfare campaigner, and former leader of 2 international NGOs outreach program. She writes on intelligence, coaches public speaking, and is on the Fervent International Policy Group, a Young Fervent Environment Networks Committee. Cecilia, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak at this session. Have to caveat that all views are obviously my own, even though taking the UK government hat off. But firstly, massive happy International Women's Day to you all. It's lovely to see some familiar faces from last session, and also Julie, whom I've chaired events with before within the Young Fabians, which is the Labour affiliated think tank that I do voluntary work for, and I'm on a few national executive committees for. So International Women's Day to me has two sides. Like feminism, it is on the one hand a celebration of women's rights, women, and how far we've come all over the world. But on the other hand, it's also a somber acknowledgement of the abominable treatment of women, Kashmiri and otherwise, that has occurred and continues to occur in real time. So there is always a bit of a mental dilemma for me in wanting to celebrate our unity and our strengths rather than catastrophize, versus not glossing over the gravitas of the situation at hand. It's no secret, as we know, that women are invariably the worst victims of wars and conflict. And given that history is generally written by the victors, and more to the point, by men, for men, it is difficult to achieve accountability for those who suffer at their hands. One has to look at the wider context to identify the chronology of events leading up to this horrific incident that we're discussing today. Nothing happens independently, nor in isolation. And the answer is that we do still live in a patriarchal society which passively and often actively endorses violence against women. Look at what's happening in the UK at the moment. It was proposed that misogyny would be made a hate crime, and that proposal has been rejected at the highest levels of government. Women are being beaten, murdered, raped, burnt by the people employed to protect them, namely the police in the case of Sarah Everard. And phrases such as, "I would happily rape her," and "give them a slap, they'll love it," are bandied across police WhatsApp chats in the UK. That's standard. And look at what's happening to Uyghur Muslims, women in China: brainwashing, incarceration, and state-sponsored rape by Chinese officials. And to women in Afghanistan by the Taliban, their rights to financial independence and education revoked, corporal punishment centers being set up, and the general complete and utter terror-based subjugation of female citizens. When cycles aren't broken, they're repeated. When a famous activist whose exhibition I went to, called Rasmus Eriksson, he said, "We have a limited emotive scope of capacity," which essentially means if we were to catastrophize and to care to our utmost about everything, LGBTQIA plus rights, women's rights, every single issue that the world has, obviously we would burn out. So this is why this group is so good, because it really brings that focus onto one particular incident. And I think what we have to do going forwards is keep expanding this network of really impressive people, as many people have already said. Keep expanding this network, keep drawing attention to the fact, because awareness is the best thing you can do in this situation. And a silent enemy and an invisible enemy is the hardest to defeat. So what I say to you is that every single time that you recruit someone else, as Julie mentioned, we've got a brilliantly diverse demographic on this whole panel. We've got young, old, different nationalities, different time zones, and I love how international it is. That's very much my thing. And so for each person you recruit, you get someone who is going to take this baton forwards and take that responsibility, take that burden, but also share it. Because a problem shared is a problem halved. And we've got to now think about what kind of actions can we take? Who are the best people to pressure? Who are the best people to write to? Who are the best people to get as a signatory on a letter or a petition, a campaign, a fundraiser? What specific actions and output can we get from these sessions? I remember attending the last one with Dr. Shagufta and everyone else. Really, really enjoyed it. And it is so impressive, the work that you're doing, because retrospective justice matters. Whether the victims have passed away or not, it sends a clear message to the people who are the perpetrators, but not only those, the people who see the accountability or lack thereof of the perpetrators. Just like the whole world was watching as Trump destroyed America. Every far-right president, prime minister, global leader went, aha, that's becoming normalized. And you might have noticed that Boris Johnson changed his tune, Modi got more aggressive, Putin got more aggressive. We don't need to talk about that, but you see my point. So essentially, what we need to do is make sure that we take back that normalization. We normalize justice, and we don't normalize people getting away with things that are abhorrent and which are the antithesis of our humanity. So I just wanted to close with a massive thank you to you all. It's such a pleasure and such an honor to be here with you all. And I'm so glad, actually, about how great technology is in this day and age. I feel very lucky that we can all connect at the same time, because I think we sometimes take that for granted. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your day in sisterhood, in solidarity, and that you are able to see and connect with the most amazing women in your life. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia, for your intervention. Now I'd like to go to Tanzeen Hassan. Tanzeen Hassan is a campaign manager of the Prisoners of Conscience and campaigns at Justice for All Canada. She's an academician, writer. Ms. Tanzeen, you have the floor.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Brother Altaf, Sister Shamim, for inviting me. Thank you, Julie, Margaret, Cecilia, mashallah. So basically, we are here for International Human Rights Day. And we are talking about Indian administered Kashmir violence against the women. I would like to share here, I would like to be brief and would like to share a special case of a lady who contacted Justice for All Canada, our founder, Abdul Malik Mujahid, who is based in Chicago. She contacted that her father has faced 35 years of prison in Indian just because he was asking for self-determination. I would like to share the video of that lady. We started working on her father's case, basically, in June 2021. And we found that he was not only declared a prisoner of conscience in 1992, but he was also offered the chief ministership of Kashmir in 1995. A.S. Dulat, former IB chief, former RAW chief in India, he wrote in his book, Kashmir, the Vajpayee Years, that I personally met Shah several times in jail and offered him the chief ministership of Kashmir, the office of chief ministership of Kashmir in 1995 on the direct orders of Narasimha Rao. I would like to share, and in November 2021, Seher, Shabir Shah's daughter, contacted me again. She went to jail to meet her father, basically, and what happened with her. I would like to share my screen, Brother Altaf, if you allow me. I want to show a video clip.
Sure.
It's disabled. Screen sharing is disabled. Can you?
Screen share हो सकती है? Huh? स्क्रीन शेयर डिसेबल है, उसको इनेबल करें। If it is
So
possible.
basically, Seher contacted me. Let me tell you the words. I just want to save my father's life. These are Seher's words. He has served 34 years in prison with no allegations ever proved against him. My name is Seher Shabbir Shah and I am 19 years old. I am the daughter of Shabbir Shah, the Kashmiri Nelson Mandela, who has served 34 years in Indian prison for demanding the right of self-determination for the Kashmiri indigenous population. In all these years, the Indian courts never convicted him. For a significant part of my life, I've met my father inside the boundaries of Indian jails. I've been seeing my father through a window of glass so small that I could barely see his face, so blurred that I couldn't picture him, but only a shadow-like thing. I could neither touch him nor see him clearly. Instead, I put my hands on the glass window, and so did my father. It felt like we were holding hands. From what I could figure out, he has turned so weak, like a skeleton. Your father will never be released. I've heard that innumerable times from the jail staff. Female forces personnel would check me thoroughly at the jail gate. They used to grab my face so harshly that it hurt, to check if I was holding something in the mouth. And the rude abuses were harsh too. I recall an incident in 2019 when I had written a poem for my father. I kept the paper with my thoughts inked on it in my pocket when I accompanied my mother to the jail. A female cop frisked me. She removed my hijab and pulled my hair, saying, "Tum atankwadi ho, you are a terrorist." She found my poem. She handed it over to one of her colleagues, a Tamilian officer who couldn't read English. इन आतंकवादियों और इनके घर वालों को सबसे बुरी सजा देनी चाहिए. These terrorists and their families should be punished badly, she said. It is a gift for my father, I'd said. Nonetheless, she called another cop and asked him to tear the poem in front of me and spit on it. They laughed and spoke in the Tamilian language that I didn't understand. On 29th October 2021, my mother and I traveled 700 kilometers from Srinagar to Delhi to visit my imprisoned father after 2 years. We were appalled to see that he couldn't stand or walk independently. He had become so frail that he had looked like his childhood photos. In the 5-minute conversation allowed by jail staff, we could understand that doctors advised my father 2 surgeries and 1 biopsy. In the past, jail authorities have ignored repeated requests for access to his medical records, that we can get an independent evaluation of his medical conditions. According to United Nations reports, Indian jails are hostile places for Kashmiris, as they are considered terrorists and traitors. Former Kashmiri prisoners say that jail doctors are more hostile than jail staff. My father's health is very critical. Any delay in surgeries can be fatal for him. We do not trust the available medical treatment options provided by jail authorities, particularly for surgeries. His life is more important than his release, yet the only he can be saved is through the release on bail, so that the family can arrange his medical treatment and surgeries independently. We request the international community to work with the United Nations and the Indian government to work for my father's release on bail on humanitarian ground. According to international fair trial standards, my father has the right to get a fair trial within a reasonable time. He is facing the 5th year of his pre-trial detention in a 14-year-old money laundering case. He has a right to bail during his prolonged pre-trial detention, according to the international law. He has a right to access his medical records. He has a right to consult his doctor and physician at his own expense. He has a right to meet his family in a comfortable atmosphere. I just want to save my father's life. So this was Shabir Shah's daughter, actually, who contacted us in June 2021 when his father was facing 35th year of his imprisonment, in consecutive imprisonment. Shabir Shah is in jail since he first met Vent. So we can't understand the psychological trauma the families are facing, the psychological harassment the families are facing, whose whole Kashmiri leadership is imprisoned right now. We just count how many are in prison, how many have been uh, how many have been uh, uh, how many disappeared involuntarily, how many has been killed as used but after using them as human shield, how many villages have been arsoned, how many houses have been burned. But we can't understand, we can't from these human stories we can see that how the women of the house is suffering when the husband is imprisoned, when the husband is killed, when the brother is disappears involuntarily. And last but not the least, the presence of 600,000 to 900,000 troops is itself a violence against the women. If you see the house and the search and cordon operations inside the homes, which violate the privacy of the home, this itself is violence. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for giving me the floor. I don't want to prolong my speech. Thank you, Brother Altaf and Sister Shamim Shawl, Margaret, Owen, Cecilia, and all other speakers. Thank you. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Tazeen Hassan, for you enlightened us about what Seher Shah has said and how the families of prisoners face in Kashmir. This is one story, but there are thousands of such stories, and currently some of the victims who are languishing in different jails in India, their families cannot reach out to them, and their families do not have this resource also to contact the international NGOs or international forums for their reparation or for help. So this is the situation in Kashmir. I will now direct to Dr. Madeline Sharp. She is an economist, president and co-founder of NGO Health and Environment Programs. Dr. Madeline, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. Before I tell you about the violence that women are experiencing in this region of Southeast Asia, I will briefly review the general situation. Muslim majority Kashmir is in the north of India, which is a secular state with a strong Hindu majority. It is composed of 3 major cities: Srinagar, Ladakh, and Jammu, still called Jammu and Kashmir Union Territory. Women of Kashmir, you are not alone. We are together for a peaceful and secure future. Enough of violence against women. The woman is not a weak sex. She is a comedian, a comrade, a friend, a sister, a cousin, an aunt, a grandmother, a wife. She must be treated with respect and dignity. Domestic violence, beatings, psychological violence, marital rape, femicide, sexual harassment or assault, rape, unwanted sexual advances, street harassment, cyber harassment, early and forced marriage, female genital mutilation, trafficking in human beings, slavery, sexual exploitation must be eliminated from our society. In Kashmir, we learned that a woman will not easily tell you that she was raped because in her culture. It is a source of shame. She buried it in her heart. She lives with her pain. Since 1989, Kashmir has been feeling occupied. So it considers India as an occupying force and thus claims its right to self-determination. That is its independence. Tensions intensified with the revocation in August 2019 of the partial autonomy of Indian Kashmir to place it under the direct control of the Hindu nationalist government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Several foreign armed groups are fighting against what they call the occupying force, resulting in the loss of human life for the majority of men on both the civilian and military sides. According to the testimony of numerous women, most of them become widows. They become widows because they lost their husband and failed to cope with family responsibilities. It should be noted that the 1972 agreement on bilateral relations between India and Pakistan, also known as the Simla Agreement, states that the final status of Jammu and Kashmir must be resolved by peaceful means in accordance with the Charter of the United Nations. From an environmental and sanitary point of view, water, as we know, is life. And in Kashmir, there is an abundance of it. It is a veritable water tower full of many streams, including the Indus, the Jhelum, and the Sutlej. 2 power plants were built on both sides of the control land on the same stream. The Jhelum River, a majestic turquoise flow that wraps through the Kashmir valleys. On the Pakistan side, the hydroelectric dam with 28 kilometers of underground tunnels and a power plant buried under 400 meters of rock in the heart of the Himalayas provides 969 megawatts of electricity. It's good. On the Indian side, the 23-kilometer Kishanganga hydroelectric power station is built 1.5 kilometers deep in the Himalayan mountain range. Winters are harsh, and temperatures can drop below minus 25 degrees Celsius, freezing temperatures. Women are the first to suffer of it. COVID-19 has led to the vulnerability of these populations and exacerbated the trauma of the fragile mental health system due to lockdowns put in place to prevent the spread of the disease in Kashmir. Domestic violence and gender-based abuse of women in their social group exist. Women who are raped are often turn to consult medical staff, which can lead to worsening of their condition. Cultural taboos about rape also prevent women from speaking. They are also the victims of other violations of their most fundamental rights. The fact that the trauma of rape is compounded by the problems of having to bear and then raise a child who is the result of an act of violence. Women who attempt to file a complaint after being raped by members of the security forces of the Indian occupier are exposed to further abuses such as threats and intimidation. Violence against women must be stopped and human rights must be respected. We must promote the well-being of all women and offer education and health for all as a priority in order to achieve a sustainable development and sustainable environment. On this International Women's Day, I greet all women, especially the women of Kashmir, for their courage. Let's say no to violence against women and long life for the women of Kashmir. Peace and security for a healthy environment. On that note, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Madeline, for your intervention. I will go to Gulelia Freira. She's human rights expert and international law student. Gulelia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for welcoming me here today. I wanted to start saying, as some of my fellow panelists said as well, that I'm deeply honored to be here, especially in International Women's Day. I want to thank the Kashmir Institute of International Relations and IMWU for welcoming me here as a panelist. And International Women's Day marks a call to action for accelerating women equality. And it is supposed to raise awareness, prevent violation of women's rights, and if necessary, to condemn the ones who perpetrate them. The situation of women in Kashmir is a topic that highlights the importance to constantly remind ourselves that even though we live in a modern world and society, there is still a long way to achieve and implement women's fundamental human rights, gender equality, and gender empowerment. Kashmir is one of the most militarized areas of the world. In fact, as underlined by the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights in its report on the situation of human rights in Kashmir, there is a collection of serious and massive violations of human rights with the action of armed groups, killing of civilians, political activists, and protesters. And the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir did not establish any investigations into the civilian killings. In armed conflicts, the roles of men and women are strictly distinguished. In fact, women are often given fewer formal roles or positions of control and command. The different roles pursued by women in armed conflicts can lead to violations of human rights. They are victims not only of physical, but also of psychological violence, and the situation worsens when it comes to conservative societies. One of the atrocities to which Kashmiri women are constantly exposed to is rape as a war weapon. Sexual torture, also known as strategic rape or act of violence that occurs in war contexts. Gender violence and rape have always been used in previous armed conflicts around the world, for example, in the Yugoslavia and also in Rwanda. But it acquired a criminal relevance not long ago. Women's bodies are still instrumentalized and humiliated, and it is our duty to inform, try to stop this atrocity, or at least punish it. When thinking of gender approach, we find that rape during an armed conflict can cause severe forms of trauma, which can have tragic consequences on the victim's psychological sphere, the death of victims for many different reasons, and it can be used as a tool to control births and often as a tool to physically destroy the birth givers. usually with the purpose of erasing a specific group, in particular when speaking of ethnic cleansing. In fact, as claimed by the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, rape becomes a genocide act is used against specific women, causing a devastating sense of suffering towards a specific group. The ICTR defines it as a physical invasion of sexual nature committed on a person under circumstances that are coercive. It is committed as a part of a widespread or systematic attack on a civilian population and on certain cataloged discriminatory grounds, namely ethnic, political, racial, or religious ones. The International Criminal Tribunal for Yugoslavia, in fact, extends its definition to act of sexual penetration without any kind of consent from the victim. It has been recognized as an instrument aiming to terrorize, demoralize the victim, obtain control on peoples and territories, to punish and humiliate, but it is mostly used as a war weapon for its tremendous consequences, unwanted pregnancies, and control over the reproductive capacities of women. Women's bodies then become enemy property. And this is something that we can observe in Kashmir. As the factor region not benefit from the qualification of the EU formal sovereign state. Since it is administered between India and Pakistan, it has been in different occasions a scenario of human rights serious violations, its people being the main characters in inhumane and degrading treatments. What India is performing in India-administered Kashmir is a set of serious violations of the Geneva Convention, including Article 3, and of the laws and customs which constitute war crimes. These kind of terms are a part of human rights serious and massive violations, which can be distinguished between atrocities, serious violations often linked with situations of armed conflict, and systematic attacks to civilians, which can be associated with war crimes, crimes against humanity, aggression, and genocide, which constitute crimes of international law over which the International Criminal Court has jurisdiction. When speaking of genocide, it is in the Article 6 of the Statute of the International Criminal Court. It is a violent act carried out with special intention, and this definition has not formally changed since 1948. I'm deeply concerned about the situation and the possible long-term effects that these atrocities will have on the lives of Kashmiri people, and especially on the lives of Kashmiri women. Therefore, I'd ask the international community to properly encourage and help Kashmiri people. I am aware that these fundamental human rights cannot be realized without it. I send my most heartfelt solidarity to the brave Kashmiri women, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Leila, for your intervention. You brought up the international law, its applicability in the armed conflict, and especially against violence against women. I will go now direct to Italy, to our young, energetic human rights activist, our good friend, Mariana Zocca. She's a human rights activist, international expert. Mariana, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wani. Hope you can hear me. Today I had some technological
we do hear you.
Okay. I'm really glad to join this panel about the Kashmiri situation once again. And as you said before, I have been studying the Kashmiri situation for a long time. And so thank you so much for inviting me every time. I am really happy about this. Given that today is the International Women's Day and that I like to define myself as a human rights activist, I strongly believe in women's rights and in the fact that women's rights are human rights, as someone said in, I think it was 1994 or 84, I don't remember. In any case, I want to tell you what has happened to me this morning, just to remind that all around the world, we need to educate people to the fact that all women should be respected. This morning, you know that now I am at work, and this morning a young manager come to wish happy Women's Day to a colleague of mine who is older than me, and she has an higher level than me, in front of me and another friend of mine. He didn't say anything to me and my friend, and we got really upset. And I think that all men all around the world should be educated and instructed about the fact that we do not need a higher level, or we do not need to have a higher level of education or working status to be recognized as women that deserve a smile, deserve an hello, how are you, or deserve something like have a nice day or enjoy your day. So I wanted to start my speech with this fact that has happened to me this morning, because I am really upset about this. And let me say that today we need to put the focus of our speech in women's rights, but not only in women's rights in general, but women's rights during warfare, in time of war, and in places like Kashmir. I will go directly to the point of my speech, that is the consequences that gender-based violence in time of war have in women, especially in women in Kashmir. We all know that the situation of Kashmir has very old roots and has involved Kashmir society at every level. Throughout the years, civilians have faced escalations of civil war that have targeted men, children, and last but not least, women. Women that have faced many kinds of body, mental, and sexual violence. We also know the reason why, and the reason is that India is occupying Kashmir, and Kashmiri women have suffered from this fact in many ways. First of all, many Kashmiri women have been left widowed without husbands, and have been left alone in a society that has required them to grow up their families alone, as I have already said. And the presence of women in protests against the Indian government has increased in those last years, so that the 23rd February 2016 has been recognized as Women's Resistance Day. This is to underline the fact that women also have the right to speech, to assembly, to the freedom of assembly, and all the civilian, all the rights related to the sphere of civilian and political rights. Furthermore, throughout the massive protests that have taken place in Kashmir streets in 2016, Indian Army has responded with violence and a massive exercise of violations against women. And then now we should talk about what has happened the 5th August of 2019, when Indian government has decided to revoke Article 317 and Article 35(8) of its constitution, which recognized a higher level of autonomy to the Kashmiri territories, occupied always by Indian government. It brought back Kashmir to violence and clashes with the Indian Army. And as reported by UN in the report of 8th of July 2019, Indian Army has been accused once again to violations related to the indiscriminate use of force against civilians in Kashmir. So once again, here you have the example of how war, occupation, invasion of territory can turn into massive violations of human rights. But in this case, as my colleagues and Julia have said, the use of force against women has turned in many women's rights violations and has acquired a different meaning. It has acquired different meaning because attacking women means targeting the heart of society and probably the weaker part of society. It also means creating a climate of terror. Unfortunately, until today, we know for sure that not all women that have been victims of mental and bodily and sexual violations perpetrated by armed forces in the Kashmiri territories have reported those violations, and so they didn't get redress for this. Furthermore, those women also are suffering for being and feel ashamed for the violence got from other men. I would also like to remind about the CEDAW. The CEDAW is an international instrument that UN has established in order to end violence against women. The Covenant on the Elimination of all forms of violations against women reminds us to the fundamental rights and dignity that belong to each single woman all around the world. The fact is that during wartime, we cannot take sexual violence as a single act, but it is an act that should be thought in a certain background, that of war. And in this background, violence, sexual violence, and gender violence become a tool of war as established already by the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia and International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, where sexual violence and gender-based violence have become a tool of war. All this kind of violations and use of force turn into consequences in international law and in violations of international criminal law, as Julia has already explained. I would, lastly but not least, I would like to remind about the fact that India has ratified CEDAW in 1918, becoming part of this covenant in 1993. And CEDAW also recognized reproductive rights, recognizing and highlighting the role that women have inside a certain society. And this role of women should not be used on the ground of discrimination. And this is embodied in Article 1 of the CEDAW, whilst Article 2 of the CEDAW requires to all state parties to take all the legislative measures for legal protection and refrain from any kind of violence against women. So India not only is not respecting the so-called jus in bello, it is not respecting the standards set out by the international law. And if it is not enough, India is also violating the so-called international standards that are legally binding for each single state in this world. The consequences we have already said, comes from war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. The only thing that, in conclusion, I would like to underline is that Indian Army has targeted women in the Kashmiri territories just because they belong to a certain social group, that of Kashmir Kashmir territories and Kashmir group, because they are Muslim for the majority. And targeting women for this, targeting Kashmir women for those reasons and targeting them in order to cause suffering has already been established that it might deal with the crime of the crime. So Article 6 of the ICC and genocide. Genocide that is defined as the intent to destroy in whole or in a part. So I would like to remind that every day in each single context of war, so that of India, but we are seeing that there are lots of warfare all around the world, targeting women of a certain group, of a certain religion, can turn into an act of genocide and into something that can be persecuted under the international criminal law, and especially in accordance with the Rome Statute. So I would like to conclude my speech by saying once again, thank you, and by saying that we should not forget about our sisters in Kashmir and all around the world. And we have a long journey and we have a long fight in order to get equal rights and equal dignity and freedom for all the women out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mariana. Now we have a video message of former senator from Australia, Lee Ranian, because there is midnight in Austria. She already has recorded her message and sent her to us. So, Matt, will you play the video?
Hello, I'm speaking to you from Australia. I do acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I am coming from and pay tribute to their history, their culture, and their ongoing struggles for justice, which tragically continue to be many. And I wish all women a happy International Women's Day. IWD has a rich history of protest and political activism. I would like to briefly mention aspects of this history to remind all of us why we need to honour and uphold the values and demands of this special day. In 1908, over 15,000 women marched through New York City demanding shorter hours, better pay and the right to vote. Most of the women were factory workers. The event was organised by the International Garment Workers Union to protest against the sweatshop conditions and starvation wages the women were paid. This event inspired women and men around the world. International Women's Day was formally recognised at the Second International Conference of Socialist Women. Clara Zetkin, a German socialist, moved at that conference that the date of the garment workers' strike, March 8, be recognised and celebrated around the world as International Women's Day. IWD 2022 is an important day to honour the struggle of Kashmiri women for self-determination for all Kashmiri people. IWD is also an occasion when we must highlight the human rights abuses Kashmiri women living in Indian-occupied Kashmir suffer, and I do congratulate the organisers of this event for putting on this special occasion. Violence impacts on all Kashmiri women, either directly or indirectly. This violence does not stop with the injuries so many women experience. Most women suffer financial insecurity, trauma and stress, all related to the shocking conditions of this ongoing violence. One of the many tragedies of India's total takeover of Kashmir and Jammu has been the increased militarisation of this region. In August 2019, the Modi government sent in tens of thousands of additional troops. This boosted the number of Indian Army, Air Force, paramilitary and Special Forces personnel in Kashmir to close to 1 million. Modi's party, the BJP, is deeply committed to extreme Hindu nationalism. The massive Indian troop occupation of Kashmir brings with it shocking violence against women and men, extrajudicial killings, kidnappings, rapes and disappearances. I wish to pay tribute to local Kashmiri journalists and activists who have risked their lives to report on the impact the Indian occupation has had on women's health and education and their day-to-day lives. Over the years, many international humanitarian groups have documented the plight of Kashmiri women. Time and time again, this shocking evidence is ignored. Human Rights Watch, in its 1993 report, found that despite the widespread evidence of sexual violence perpetrated by the Indian Army and paramilitary forces, few of the incidents are ever investigated by the authorities, and no prosecution of alleged rapists in the military or security forces has occurred. Physicians for Human Rights and Asia Watch have conducted investigations into rape by the military in Kashmir, documented in their report Rape in Kashmir. Médecins Sans Frontières has reported that 11.5% of Kashmiris have directly experienced sexual violence, many of them repeatedly. Complaints to the police, however, are rarely investigated, and prosecutions for these crimes virtually never take place. The lack of investigations is because the Indian Armed Forces Special Powers Act gives troops and security forces effective immunity from prosecution for serious human rights abuses. This law is in force in Kashmir and Jammu. Numerous reports, including from UN experts, have called for the repeal of at least a review of this act. Sadly, this has not occurred. Recently, Kashmiri women have faced both the pandemic lockdown and the ongoing Indian occupation and lockdown. There are no domestic violence refuges in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Women-focused NGOs find it difficult to carry out their work. The BJP government disbanded the State Commission for Women in 2019 when they removed Jammu and Kashmir's statehood. This meant a key organisation that spoke up for survivors of gender-based violence was abolished. What is the future of Kashmiri women, we need to ask? International Women's Day provides many lessons on the importance of international solidarity. I think our priority needs to be on building an international movement to amplify the voice of Kashmir for their rights to be respected and honoured, and for those perpetrating crimes against the women, men and children of Kashmir to be charged and prosecuted. We need a movement similar to the great anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa in the latter decades of the last century, and the Palestinian Solidarity Movement that today is mobilising the support of millions around the world. If our demand for Kashmiri self-determination is to ring out with strength and passion, I believe building such an international movement must be a priority. Thank you.
Thank you. This was a wonderful message from Senator Leash. He's always there to speak on Kashmir, but unfortunately this time is midnight in Australia, so it was a video message. Now I will go straight away to Nida, Barrister Nida Salam, for an intervention. Nida, you have 6 minutes of intervention.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Vanessa. Always, I'm obliged and privileged that you gave me opportunity. Secondly, I would like to say Happy International Women's Day to all the competent and beautiful women out there. As far as the Kashmir is concerned, and in relation to women and children, we are very passionate, and that issue is very close to our hearts. In the last 50 years, professional women have jumped huge hurdles in the corporate world. Women empowerment has become the widest slogan of today's world. Not only the feminists stand for it, but everyone seems to speak about it, or should we say, promote the revolutionary dialogue. For instance, when it comes to the girls' education and its significance, stereotyping, obstacles to gender equality, structural barriers, and cultural barriers. as I would like to quote a very famous saying, that if you want to destroy a nation, destroy its women through deprivation of education. So as far as the women in occupied Kashmir are concerned, they are in very bad situation at the moment. When I strongly consider human rights and violations of human rights under the umbrella of fascist, arrogant, and racist Modi. Conflict situations always create risks for women across the globe. If I would like to give the example of Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Palestine, occupied Kashmir, in the context of abuse and exploitation, both directly where women are specifically targeted and indirectly because conflict leads to a breakdown in the structure of the family. So conflicts, especially unconventional ones, destroy the core group of a society. That is the family as well, in relation to that. So, and it can take decades after the conflict is over to recover from this destruction, which we have experienced recently from our neighbors, that is Afghanistan. Ever since the center of gravity of wars, conventional and unconventional, shifted from the armed forces to civilian populations, and women and children have become a part of the targeting strategies. In Kashmir, yes, Kashmiri women suffered the most, I think, across the globe, if we consider the statistics and the percentage. Yet in processes aimed at ending wars and resolving conflicts, women have been left out of the mainstream of stakeholders involved in peacemaking. So the reality of Indian democracy is most conspicuously exposed in occupied Kashmir at the moment, which the Western world and our allies and communities are quite well aware of it. On 5th August 2019, the Indian state stripped Kashmir of Article 370, followed by the denial of every essential right via regular crackdowns on the internet, phone services, restriction on movement, prolonged lockdowns, and so on, to make Kashmiri life even more wearisome. Besides the routine humiliation, Indian Army, Indian security forces, Central Reserve Forces, and police checkpoints, surveillance, harassment, blockades, illegal detention, profiling, and that the people face has become a gruesome yet banal reality of their everyday existence. So when I consider the women of the developed world and developed societies and the developing societies in the South Asian part, and when I compare them with the women in occupied Kashmir, honestly speaking, my heart bleeds in relation to that. You can see the women in developing world or developed world are progressing from education to professional life to the family life. And when we consider the women in occupied Kashmir, they are suffering from education to professional life to the family life. Imagine if I would like to give the example of the ex-prime minister of Britain, ex-prime minister of Britain, Theresa May, and how she represented the country across the globe. If I consider German Chancellor Angela Merkel, how can I forget Vice President of United States of America at the moment? So our Home Minister Priti Patel of Great Britain. So when I compare the women of developed world to the occupied Kashmiri women, my question as a proud Pakistani Kashmiri woman, why double standards when it comes to the human rights, when it comes to the women's rights? Why double standards for the women living in the Western world, in developed world with the more opportunities, exposure, and experience than the women living in oppressive, suppressive, humiliating state under the umbrella of fascist, racist, arrogant Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi? I would like to quote here for the half widows of Kashmir leading a dignified life can become a real challenge in today's time and age. In a typical Kashmiri society, women's identity is intervened with their husbands once a woman is married off, so she becomes the man's responsibility. So in relation to the half widow, I think women are still suffering in occupied Kashmir today. Thus, many of these women and their children get into the survival crisis with no source of income. I would like to give an an example of one lady called Naila Ali Khan through my research I came across of her writing. She belongs to an academia background and the granddaughter of Sheikh Abdullah. She writes very explicitly that the lack of closure in their lives makes their existence unbearable. Yet at the same time, it is the vulnerability of these women which brings them together and facilitates building solidarity where they are bound by grief and struggle and resistance. So again here, like I strongly believe that highly educated people living in India and believing on human rights to practice and to bring into existence, they strongly agree with the violations which are occurring in occupied Kashmir at the moment. And an objectified image of a fair-skinned Kashmiri woman has become a common and casual part of everyday language in the heart of India. Even one member of the cabinet of Narendra Modi passed a very nasty comment in relation to the Kashmiri woman and her skin color. So one can easily encounter the bigotry towards Kashmiri women. The recent demonstration of the sexiest attitude penetrating the Indian society was also visible in the TikTok videos of men swearing about the prospect of marrying a Kashmiri woman after the abrogation of the Article 370 on 5th August 2019. So Kashmiri women have been routinely exorcised the removal of patriarchal fantasy of occupying the Kashmiri women by Indian Army, Indian Central Reserve Force, and all that. However, the irony of the situation is that the equal rights for the women in Kashmir are not into existence. So in reality, I strongly believe that in occupied Kashmir, women have no access to the justice system and are vulnerable than ever before. India is in a breach of international law, international commitments and agreements. India is in a breach of Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which she is signatory to, Convention on the elimination of all the forms of discrimination against women, United Nations declarations on the elimination of violence against women. So, like, I strongly believe that not only physical violence, like mental violence, social violence, that are into existence. Women are not allowed to have a proper education, to exercise their professional life, or to exercise proper family life. So that is a violence towards her caliber and capacities and capabilities, violence toward her towards her mental health. So again, for that, India as a state is in a breach, and I strongly believe that on this International Women's Day, a very strong message from women across the globe towards the women in occupied Kashmir, that like we can only say stay strong, and we can only accuse, not accuse is the right word, we can only highlight the actual situation, actually, whatever is happening there at the moment, and we can let the Western communities and the Western world and the allies to be aware that about the reality, what's going on, and they should raise their voice in relation to protect women from all perspectives. Thank you so much, Bani Saab, as always.
Thank you, Barrister Nida, for your contribution. Now I will give floor to Madam Shamim Shal. She is the permanent representative of International Muslim Women's Union at UN Geneva. She is a very experienced and eldest voice of Kashmiri women, projecting their rights at international forums. Ms. Shaw is also the co-host of this webinar. Ms. Shaw, your valuable contribution, please.
Thank you, Mr. Vani. Thank you, participants. Thank you, my colleagues. I think it is good afternoon in Canada, in UK, and it is good late evening here in Pakistan. I thank all the participants for participating in today's deliberations. These deliberations have provided an opportunity to discuss different challenges faced by women in different conflict areas, especially in Kashmir. On this International Women's Day, we are celebrating all those incredible women who have played a role to make the lives of their fellow women better, and have stood firmly to complete their mission. When we talk about the Kashmiri women, I would like to focus on the present time. This is very important, and what is most important is to create a space for educating the Kashmir cause in international corridors by the people like you who are the participants, parliamentarians, advocates, and NGOs to guarantee an access to all working for human rights and also the international bodies. It needs to be confessed that in the absence of global scrutiny, Kashmir has become a graveyard of human rights where people have been denied all the fundamental freedoms and even their right to life is at stake. India always tried to break down the will of the people and cheat the world. It is very important to understand the complications of imposed war on Kashmiri people and on the psyche. And it's basically an attempt to create a fear of and helplessness among people, especially women and children. World accepts the determination of the people of occupied Jammu and Kashmir, including the role being played by its brave and courageous daughters, especially our brave women whose lives, families, and children are at high risk in Kashmir, as we have listened by Tazeen, what has been done with the daughter of our great leader, Shabir Shah, in jail. Their children and male members either are taken away from them to different Indian jails or killed in cold blood or disappeared during these years of imposed war. They forced women of Kashmir to live the most difficult life without male members. The women who survived in this conflict zone are playing active role in social and political setup. The world does not yet know their contribution. Their suffering is not known to everybody. Their voices are not heard. They are raped in Kunandpur and everywhere in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Their husbands were disappeared and they got the title of half widows, but they are playing a tremendous role. Although they are imprisoned, they are in different Indian jails. At home, they are not safe, but they are determined for their rights and freedom. Indian forces want to break down this important pillar, will of women. I should salute to those who are contributing, like Asya and Rabi. She never compromised for her mission and even left her young children behind and worked day and night for just cause. I must salute Khatija Banu, a brave Kashmiri daughter, dedicated her life for the cause. Masrat Zahra, a Kashmiri photojournalist, said on this occasion, I must pay salute that I am being targeted because of my identity as a woman and also because of my work, which focuses on the brutalities faced by women and children in Kashmir. Asya Jilani, a human rights activist who did not remain silent, and she became a strong voice for women's safety and rights. Amina Banu, and she sacrifices 2 sons. Tabassum Guru, when she was asked about the letter written by Shaheed Afzal Guru, she said, I quote, there was nothing for my family and for myself. It was a letter written for nation. Be proud of my faith. This is the message to every Kashmiri. Asya Baby, who was an innocent child was killed by Indians, and the innocence was revenged. Insha Mushtaq, bloom of dead eyes. How can we should remember these and how we can forget. Zamrud Habib, prisoner number 100. We salute our leadership. We salute those who are in jail. I believe that this forum and the wisdom of our people, the people of Jammu and Kashmir, in a sphere of different shades of opinion, diversity of strategies moderators and hardliners, they have sent a categorical message to the world, especially women leadership, that their movement is homegrown and indigenous, and their goal is freedom. I salute my sisters who are suffering at this time, and we are celebrating, and they are observing the International Women's Day. Today we are together and we will play for them. Thank you, Mr. Vani.
Thank you, Madam Shawl, for your remarks and enlightening the audience about the ordeal of Kashmiri women. This was today's webinar. As Ms. Shawl rightly said, we should salute to the resilience of Kashmiri women who are fighting the cause of self-determination side by side to their men. They have endured a lot of sufferings and pain during this long struggle. And what they faced, we have already shown you through a small documentary. I must end with the words of what Lee said, that we should build a strong moment, and what Julie said, speak the truth to the power. If we all contribute to this and assemble together and do contribute to the cause, not only of the Kashmir, but all oppressed people around the globe, but Kashmir, as we are the people who are suffering on ground, we know the sufferings of our people, and there is no repression, there is no hearing from the international governments, but we are thankful to the international civil society. At least the international human rights watchdogs have always reported on the conflict of Kashmir, on the sufferings of the people of Kashmir, also to the UN special rapporteurs who have time and again issued the communications to the government of India to improve its human rights record in occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and also to the UPR sessions, the contributions from different civil society members who asked the government of India to repeal the Armed Force Special Power Act and Public Safety Act and other draconian laws in order to pave the way for the betterment of human rights in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Nevertheless, Kashmir is a political problem. It's a problem of self-determination, which is guaranteed to the people of Kashmir by no less than an authority, the United Nations Security Council. But unfortunately, the polarization of Security Council has cast all its shadows on the oppressed nations around the globe. Wherever they have some interest, economic interest or strategic interest, they do come in, they do jump in, they do impose sanctions, they do even innovate those. But in case of Kashmir, from last 33 years especially, we have seen the international community has largely remained silent. That has encouraged the Indian government to not only to enact such a big series of human rights laws which facilitate the human rights violation in occupied Kashmir, also have stripped Kashmir of its special status, whatever was there, and also has made India so arrogant that they are not listening to any reason at international level. They don't care about the communications, they don't care about the reports of the High Commissioner, they don't care about the reports by the international human rights organizations, but the civil society around the globe will have to come forward in favor of the people of Kashmir to speak the truth to the power, so that power corridors come in and make India accountable of its war crimes in occupied Kashmir. With this, I thank you all for your time, for your precious time, your wonderful contributions from Australia to Canada, from one pole to another pole. We are there. So all of you are very valuable friends of Kashmir. Especially, I must thank our eldest friend, Margaret, for being there for a long time and making wonderful contributions time and again. Julie, who was in travel, but still then she came in and joined us. Lee, Mariana, Tazeen Hassan Saiba, Dr. Marin Shab, and Nida, Gulela, thank you all for your contribution. And Cecilia, she has left us. She is also a wonderful contributor. Thank you all. We stand with the woman. I will end with the quote of Hazrat Ali Karmullah Ta'ala Wajh, the fourth Caliph of Muslim Ummah, who said that be respectful to the women, for they are the mothers of the mankind. That is the message of the day. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manisab. Have a good time.